Hello, and thank you, Kim. I think I was on mute for a moment there. Welcome back to our webinar series, Coping Well During COVID. And as Kim has already said, today we're going to be looking specifically at managing financial well-being. So hopefully you're here to hear a little bit more. We are going to be inviting two special guests with us today. So I won't be presenting alone. So we have Jerry During and Laura Peters joining us. So I will introduce them briefly now, but we will introduce them properly later on in the webinar. So Jerry During is an expert in finance, and he is the CEO and co-founder of Money A&E. We also have Laura Peters joining us, who is the Head of Advice and Information Services at Rethink Mental Illness. And so we're very excited and pleased that they have decided to join us today to really give some practical financial advice so that hopefully you go away from today's webinar feeling supported. But before we get started on the webinar, we'd like to show you how to use this Q&A function. So if you've never been on one of our webinars before, we do use this throughout to be a bit more interactive. So there's a question mark in the top right hand corner. So if you click on that, and then there's an option to enter your name, but our preference is that you click on the small box by the blue arrow to remain anonymous, and then enter your question. Once you've written it, click on the arrow to send. And so this is how we will interact with you. So if we ask you a question, we would also like you to use this, use it and respond here. If we ask you a poll, then please scroll up and find the comments using this function as well. And yeah, we will not be publishing everything immediately because everything is going to be approved by a moderator. So it may take a few moments to appear. If you wish to keep your question private for the moderators only, then please add private at the beginning of your comment or question. We may not be able to answer all questions, but hopefully we'll get through as many as possible. But thank you for taking the time to respond to us. So let's try it out now. So we're going to start by finding out a little bit about who you are and who you are here for. So if you head over to the Q&A now, open it up. We've already pasted in the comment section these options. So are you here for yourself? Are you here for a family member or friend who is struggling, or as a professional, or as in another capacity? Please click like, so click on the thumbs up to indicate which of these options is relevant to you. So that's just a good way of us showing you how to use this function. So we wanted to share a little bit about what this series of webinars is about. So the series on the whole has been designed to help you to cope with the impact caused by the coronavirus. But the theme of each webinar has been changing each week, and we've been trying to respond to what's happening, respond to your feedback throughout the other webinars that we've delivered already. And this seemed to be a very important topic that we're going to focus on today. And so each week we've been focusing on different ways that your well-being may be impacted, focusing on understanding why you feel the way you feel, and also giving you some strategies to help. Today's webinar will be slightly different in that it's focusing more on real practical steps that you can take. But let's see your responses and see who you are here from, who you are here for today. So I'm just going to pull up the Q&A and see that so far most of you have responded for yourself. So you are here for yourself, and hopefully today you go away with some real practical financial support and know a bit more about what you can do to help yourself. Okay, what do you hope to get out of this webinar? So please just spend a bit of time sharing with us what you hope to gain from the webinar today, and we'll come to your responses in a few moments. So each of our webinars is designed to provide you with a toolkit of evidence-based resources, ideas and tools to help you manage and cope over the next few days, weeks or months. And most of our webinars are based on cognitive behavioural therapy, which is a very effective treatment for anxiety or low mood. And the focus of cognitive behaviour therapy is making changes to the way we think, but also to what we do and how we behave. In today's webinar, we have also invited some practical experts to advise us. So we really wanted some practical advice for you that you could go away with, and that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So we've invited Jerry and Laura to join us in order to give you that really useful practical advice. So Jerry is going to present Money A&E's 4-step process, which is designed to work at all income levels and in all financial situations. And then Laura Peters will share some of the common questions that they've received during the last few months at Mental Health and Money Advice. And she's also going to provide some relevant advice. And then I'll finish off with how to overcome obstacles that might actually stop you from acting on this really useful advice. So that's a little bit of an overview of what to expect from today's webinar. Let's have a look at what you hope to get from today. So I'll just come over to those responses now. So I'd like to find some tips and practical ways of supporting my colleagues, how to cope when a partner is out of work due to COVID. Lovely. I'll just see if there's any more coming through. Both of those things we'll be covering some really useful tips and strategies if one of you is out of work, and how to kind of manage financially and what you can do to help yourself when finances are a bit tighter. Ways to manage funds and hope with the pending economic crisis. So kind of sounds like a bit more preparing. So preparing for things to get worse maybe, and how to kind of manage the funds so that you are prepared. We definitely will cover that. Maybe not as specific as that, but some tools that will help you with that. Thank you. Lovely. So I will come back to the slides. So we wanted to highlight that it has been a really challenging time for a lot of people over the last few months. This pandemic has brought out a huge amount of uncertainty during this time, and it has been really difficult for a lot of people. Things do feel very uncertain and unpredictable, and it is a scary time. So we may feel or find ourselves worrying a lot more than usual, or feeling more stressed or anxious, or perhaps even irritable or angry. And you may have found that you were on a bit of a roller coaster of emotions, and that can feel really challenging. But it can be particularly difficult if you're under increased financial pressure as a result of the changes that we've all been experiencing, whether or not you've been furloughed, or whether or not you've lost your job, or one of your partner has potentially is out of work. That can have a significant impact on your financial situation, and that can obviously have an impact on the way that we feel. And we just wanted to highlight that it's okay to not feel okay, and there's a large part of what we're going through right now. It's actually expected that we would feel down, frustrated, anxious, overwhelmed, because it's been a lot. And for some of us, it might have been really hard, and we may feel that we don't know where to turn. And we wanted you to know where you can turn if you do need immediate support. So if you're having thoughts of suicide or of harming yourself in any way, then it's important to tell someone. Don't struggle by yourself. And we recommend the Samaritans. They're a fantastic organisation that are available at any time of day or night. And you can call them for free on 116 123. So we recommend that if you do need any support right now, then reach out. You'll find this information copied and pasted into the Q&A at the very top. So if at any point you need this number, please go there. And we'll also find further information at the end of the webinar today about how you can access further support as well if you need it. Okay, so enough from me right now. It would be great to hear from our experts. So we're going to start by introducing Jerry During. He is the CEO and co-founder of Money A&E. Jerry was motivated to work in money advice from an early age when his father fell into high levels of debt. And Money A&E is based on the same two things that helped Jerry and his father through that time: expert money advice, coupled with support from friends, family and community. And so it's really important to create those new networks to talk about money and get the support that you need. And that's what Jerry is going to be talking about today. So without any more, I just want to hand over to Jerry, and so the next part of the webinar will be over to you. Welcome, Jerry.
Hi, Emily. Thank you, and hello, everyone. Yes, as Emily introduced me, my name's Jerry, and I work for a social enterprise called Money A&E, which stands for Money Advice and Education. And our aim and purpose really is to help people to become more confident with their money. We work with diverse ethnic communities and disadvantaged communities. At this time of this COVID-19 crisis, there's been lots of issues that have really heightened the level of mental health challenges and worries about debt that people are facing. You know, statistics show that around 5.3 million people are more worried, and anxiety levels have been heightened as a result of sort of COVID-19. We've had almost 2 million people who have been who have lost their jobs and are claiming unemployment benefits. And even prior to the COVID-19 crisis, around 24 million people were either in a crisis debt situation or actually struggling to meet day-to-day bills and needing some level of support. So this is not a small issue. It's something that is happening to a lot of us today. And our service at Money A&E is really designed, as I said, to help diverse ethnic communities and disadvantaged communities who face certain social barriers. Lots of these communities, they face trust issues through, and as a result, they won't necessarily go to advice agencies that can support them. So our aim is really to support them, and we do that in a number of ways. So as a result of COVID-19, all of our services are delivered either on the telephone or remotely through a digital format as well. And the three things that we do are one-to-one advice, we do money education workshops, and then we do mentoring courses as well. Our one-to-one advice is advice quality standard, quality marked advice, and we support people with debt, welfare benefits, and we give them money guidance about how to manage their money and achieve their money goals. We do money education workshops in schools, in community groups, in employment settings, so we can do it in workplaces, working with employees as well. And through those workshops and that work, we aim to increase people's confidence about managing their money and achieving their money goals. And then we also offer a mentoring program as well, which is really about getting people to talk more about money issues in communities, in those communities that we work with, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's in the schools, whether it's in the community groups that you are part of, whether it's just in your homes. The more you talk about money, the more you're obviously going to be able to get support and also feel a bit more confident handling it. So our mentoring course is a GCSE or a level 2 Ofqual recognised qualification. And it really helps people to manage their money, but also help other people in their community, in their family, and those who they know in their work settings and schools as well, to really understand money and achieve those money goals. And it's really about a shared experience. We think it's really important that you talk to people and get that support that you need. So something that we do when we're doing our workshops, our advice and our mentoring is something that we call the 4-step process. And this can apply to anyone in any situation and is a really helpful process that we think helps you to actually start getting closer to your money goals, helps you to manage your money, and helps you to start feeling a bit more confident about managing potential debt and crisis situations as well. And when you do have that control, it also helps to reduce these levels of mental health problems that people are facing, such as depression and anxiety. So the first thing that I'll talk about is the first step in the process, and that is to identify your money goal. So when you identify your money goal, this gives you purpose and clarity. And a money goal can be anything from buying a car, a laptop, a mobile phone, a mortgage, but often it's also about paying down debts that people may have as well and finding ways to overcome some of the money challenges that they might be facing. So identifying that money goal is really important, and we think it's important that you visualize this. It's really important to take time to write this down or to keep it somewhere where you can be reminded of this every day, and you can basically focus your time and energy in a really focused way to actually bear it in mind and start taking steps on a daily basis to actually overcome these money issues. So often it's important when you've got a money goal to decide what you need to do to actually start getting there. And this process will help you. It will give you some very simple, practical steps that can help you to get closer to that money goal. And it may seem difficult initially, but when you begin to write it down and start to follow this process, this can really help you get clarity and help you to actually get closer to those goals that you want for yourself. So if we look at step 2, after you've kind of visualized your goal and you've decided what it is you want to focus your time and energy on, it's important to make a note. And it's also important to really get a snapshot of what is going on with your finances at that point in time. A good way of doing this is looking at your bank statements for maybe the last 3 months, I would say at least, to see all the income that's coming in. And you may know this, it could be your salary, it could be benefits, you may have something that some people might call a side hustle or a hobby that you use to actually increase your income. But looking at that money over a 3-month basis will begin to give you a little bit of a snapshot of exactly how much money there is that's coming in. Things like benefits as well can sometimes be quite complex as well to understand, and we don't always know whether we're getting our correct entitlements. So what we would say is, in those situations, look at your benefits, but there are some online tools that you can use. There is a tool, and we'll give you all of this information towards the end of the seminar as well. But there are some online tools such as Turn to Us and Entitled To, and you can actually go onto these websites and they help you to work out exactly how much benefits you're entitled to. But they're not fully accurate. So we'd also encourage you, if you're still not sure and you're trying to work out what sorts of benefits you might be entitled to call a telephone agency. You can call Money A&E. There are agencies like Income Max. There are lots of agencies online that can help you to get this kind of support and make you really realise exactly what you're getting. Also, my colleague, who will be speaking later on, Emily, works for mental health and money, and they are also a telephone service that can support you with things such as benefit entitlements and letting you know where you need to go to get this kind of support. So it's really important to look at that in terms of your benefits. In terms of employment, it might be good to look at your tax code and see whether you're getting the right amounts. And also, if you thought of things that you could do around increasing your income, are there any hobbies that you have? Is there a small enterprising idea that might allow you to get a little bit of money? Is there overtime that you can do? Think of some of these things, and these are all the things that you should do. Once you've looked at your income, start to think of things you can do to start increasing it. It might also be a situation, especially now with COVID, where people are potentially being made redundant or having to consider new roles where they may have to reduce their incomes as well. So That will allow you to start thinking about things that you can do to downsize so that your expenses are not too high. But downsizing is very important. So what I would then say is we can look at the next step. And step 3 is about assessing your expenses. It's important to assess your expenses and then, where possible, find ways to decrease this. So again, it's important to use things like on a budget. This can be used electronically, but there's also something called a spending diary, which is something that you can use on a daily basis, really, to focus on exactly what you're spending your money on. Have you spent your money on those essential things that are going to help you move closer towards that money goal that you've set for yourself? Or is it things that you could potentially do without, and are you throwing that money away potentially and spending it on things that aren't worth your while? So what I would say is try and draw up a budget sheet. You can do it in paper format, and there are lots of online tools that we will also share with you at the end of this. And also electronic spending diaries also help you to really look at your expenses. For most of us in the lockdown, it's affected us in many ways, but hopefully it's helped a lot of us in a positive way of really looking at how we can reduce our expenses and focus it onto some of those essential things. And hopefully we may have a little bit more money left over than we normally have. The key thing is to know how much is coming in and going out, and also where you can cut back. You need to look at your needs versus your wants. What are the things that you need, and what are the things that are going to help you to get closer to that money goal you set for yourself, and what are those wants, things that you can potentially do without. So it's really important to do that. When you're also looking at your expenses and ways of cutting back, a very important thing is also looking at comparison tools and online tools, things like comparison sites. We've got things like the money savings expert, Martin Lewis. You may have all seen him on the TV and used his website. He's got lots of really useful tools and resources that you can use to help you really get the best deal. Uswitch is another comparison site that is used for utility. And things like gas and electricity, you can actually shop around and think, actually, am I getting the best deal with my gas or my electricity supplier? Can I go elsewhere? And often when people do this exercise, they can save hundreds of pounds throughout the year. So it's important to look at these and see what you can do. Check your allowances in terms of your taxes, in terms of marriage tax and allowances. Are you getting taxed at the right rate, or are you being overtaxed? Can you get some of that money back? Look on those bank statements, as we said. Look at direct debits. Can you cancel some of them? Can you reduce them? And also, it's normal for emotions to play a part in your spending as well. When you look at the spending diary and look at the different things that you can do, they'll help you to realize, actually, are your emotions making you spend things that you don't necessarily need to? And is that spending, as I said, taking you away from that money goal that you set for yourself? And like I said at the beginning, when you're looking at a goal, it's good to think about it every day where you can, so that you're focused on it. Our lives are very complex, lots of things happen, and we often get distracted. But I'd suggest spending 10 minutes a day to look at your finances and really focus on ways of reducing those expenses and getting closer to that money goal. If we move on to the last slide. And step 4, this is the final step in the process. What normally happens is when you have looked at your money goal, you've then found your income and found ways of increasing it, and then you've looked at your expenses at step 3 and decided ways that you can reduce it. The idea is that there's some money left over, and we call this disposable income. It's really important to use that disposable income and put it towards that money goal that you've set for yourself. One thing that can happen, however, is if you have found that after doing this exercise, looking at your budgets, your expenses are constantly more on a monthly basis than your income, then there is potentially a bit of a problem here. And I would say that it's really important that you go and you get some outside support. And some of those agencies that I would mention that you can contact on the phone would be things like Mental Health and Money, Money A&E, as I've said, Step Change, National Deadline. These are all telephone advice services that we will give you at the end of this webinar, which will be really useful resources for you to use to pick up the phone get some support, talk to someone, get support and advice, especially if those expenses are much higher than your income. But as I've said, if you're in a situation where you have that disposable income and your income is getting bigger and your expenses are getting smaller, then that disposable income can be used, and you can start putting that towards that money goal that you've set for yourself, whether it is that home, whether it is a car, whether it's a new phone or a laptop, or whether it is just reducing the levels of debt that you have as well. It's really going to help you get closer to that goal. You can always apply these principles regardless of what situation you're in, and they will always help you to get closer to your money goal. And I'm just going to finish off with one last case study. We see lots of people coming through our doors, and I'm just going to share with you the story of Ruth, who was made redundant in 2016. She was depressed and had a lot of anxiety as a result of the debt that she was facing. So because her income had dropped, she couldn't keep up with her rent, her council tax, and some credit debts that she had. She came to us and she got one-to-one advice from our expert advisors. She also attended workshops and decided to actually learn and become a mentor. And she used that learning to actually help a number of others within who came to our service. She acted as a mentor with us and helped others, really talked to them about their money. She knew what it felt like coming from that situation herself and really wanted to support others. And others really found that support from a mentor, someone who's been in exactly the same situation as them, who understands their problem as well, really helpful. And there's just something that she said was, there were two things she said that really stood out for me. And she said, there's just something about owing money. You don't tell your friends. You talk to your friends about health and relationship problems, but you never talk about money. And she also said that this debt problem always stayed in her head at night and she couldn't sleep. So she isolated herself, she had lack of sleep, and as a result she was depressed and had lots of anxiety. We spoke to her pretty recently, and what she did say is, as a result of working with Money A&E and being a mentor during the COVID-19 crisis, she, for the first time, had been able to put money away for herself and didn't really need to worry about it. She'd been working as an executive assistant, and she'd been applying a lot of the principles of this 4-step process, and found that because she had that money there, she didn't have to worry. Even though she'd been furloughed and her income had been reduced, she was in a much better situation. So that's all from me. Thank you very much, Laura, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jerry, for sharing your expert advice with us today. It was really informative. Thank you. So we're now going to hear from Laura Peters, who is joining us today. Laura is Head of Advice and Information Services at Rethink Mental Illness. She has oversight of the UK-wide Mental Health and Money Service, which is a specialist service providing advice and information about money to people with mental health problems. And she has worked in the advice sector for over 10 years, working in both debt and mental health advice services. So we're really lucky to hear from Laura today. So welcome, Laura. Please join us now. Hello.
Hi. Hi, thanks very much, Emily, and thanks very much, Jerry, for taking us through that 4-step process, which I think is really, really clear, and it's probably got people really thinking about kind of what their money goals might be and how they can achieve those. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about mental health and money advice first of all. So we are a UK-wide service, and as Emily mentioned, we provide advice to people about money who have mental illnesses, and we also help their carers as well. So that includes things like claiming benefits, dealing with debts, but also helping to source support for people's mental health when they contact us as well. We also run our website, mentalhealthandmoneyadvice.org.uk, or you can see the sort of short version of the website address there, which is a one-stop shop for all things related to money and mental health. So you can have a look there for advice about benefits and debts and savings and insurance, but it's all done with a mental health lens. So we're always trying to reflect the difficulties that people might have when they've got a mental illness and a money problem, because we know that those two things are intrinsically linked. We know that money problems, as Jerry has already mentioned about his about Ruth, that those money problems can cause mental illness, but also that some mental illnesses can actually exacerbate our money problems as well, and that there's kind of a dual stigma and difficulty in dealing with both mental health issues and money, exactly as Ruth said, which means it can be hard to kind of seek help for both at the same time. So just moving on to the next slide. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you through some of the questions that we've heard from a lot of our clients over the past few months whilst COVID-19 has been going on, and some of the advice that we've given to those people. So really a question that's coming up very often at the minute for us is for people who are furloughed, their income has gone down and therefore they are struggling to pay their bills. So first of all, the thing that we always say to people is it's really important, as Jerry said, to write down your incomings and outgoings in a budget. I know that budgeting can be very stressful, particularly if you're already suffering with anxiety and depression and things like that. And so it's really important to sort of say to yourself that it's okay to feel a bit stressed about doing a budget, and to sort of employ any coping mechanisms that you have when you're starting that budget. So it might be for you that all you need to do is break it down into small chunks and say to yourself, right, today I'm just going to look at my income, then I'm going to have a sorry, my cat might suddenly appear. Today I'm just going to have a look at my income, and then tomorrow I'm going to sit down and look at my outgoings, you know, when I've kind of built up my confidence again. Or it might be that actually doing some breathing exercises might work for you. So you know, square breathing is a really good technique that can help you calm down if you're panicking about money issues. The next thing that you should always do is maximize your income, as Jerry said. So it's really important to check, are there any other sources of income that you could be getting now that your income has gone down? Might you be entitled to some benefits? Are there some benefits you might have already been entitled to that you didn't realise, like disability benefits, for example? So there is a website called Turn to Us, and they've got a really good benefits calculator on there. Just go in, you pop in all your details, and it will tell you if there's benefits that you're missing out on at the minute. And then really, really importantly, you really must seek advice if you're unable to cover your normal outgoings. So once you've done that budget sheet, if you've seen that actually you're not going to be able to pay your credit card or your gas and electric bill this month, it's really important to seek advice as early as possible. So there's plenty of excellent debt advice organisations, so obviously ourselves, Mental Health and Money Advice, Money A&E, and then also nationwide services like National Deadline and Step Change. Got really experienced advisors who can explain to you what to do when you're not able to cover your outgoings. So the next question we've been getting a lot recently is people who have already fallen behind on some of their bills because their income has gone down a bit. They're finding that they're getting hassled by different people that they owe money to, and they just feel like they haven't got the money to pay everybody. And for quite a lot of people who've got a mental health condition as well, it's kind of exacerbated because they don't want to get judged because of their mental health too. So first of all, it's really important to prioritise any debts and bills that you've got outstanding. So we always talk about the difference between priority and non-priority debts. So priority debts are debts where you might, something sort of bad could happen if you don't pay them. So for example, your rent or your mortgage, if you don't pay those things, then there's a risk that you could be evicted from your property. Non-priority debts are debts where something less bad could happen to you if you don't pay them. So with things like credit cards, overdrafts and loans, those debts will affect your credit reference file if you don't pay them. There's not going to be anything as extreme as losing your property. So it's really important to know the difference between priority and non-priority debts. Again, a really good debt advice organisation will be able to tell you the difference and take you through that. There's plenty of information on our website, National Deadline's website, Step Change's website, that will explain the difference to you as well, so you can work out which are the priorities and which are the non-priorities. Now, we know that talking to creditors can create quite a lot of anxiety. So it can be worrying when you're going to pick up the phone to somebody and tell them that you're not going to be able to afford to pay them this month. during this kind of coronavirus period, banks in particular are offering a lot of forbearance at the minute. So I think it's really important to make sure that you do talk to your creditors and feel able to do that. But if you are feeling very anxious, then try and find a technique to manage this if you need to. So I know Emily in a minute is going to take us through some kind of CBT techniques you might use. But again, sort of meditation, breathing exercises can really help you calm you down before you enter into those interactions. And I think the other important thing to remember is that, yes, there is stigma associated with debt and also with having a mental health problem. But many people are in the same boat. And it's really important that we don't let our money problems affect our self-esteem, which can make our mental health problems worse. So it's really important to try and remember all of the things that are good about you. So you're definitely not just a person with a mental illness, you're definitely not just a person with debt. There's lots of different good values that you have. And actually, it can be really helpful to make a list of the things that you're proud of yourself about, especially before you're going to deal with any creditors, so that you can really boost your self-esteem and manage your mental health while you're dealing with your creditors. So, and this is a very common one at the minute with a lot of things in the news about how the economy is going into a recession. It's going to affect a lot of people's jobs. So we have got a lot of people telling us that either they're worried about losing their jobs or actually their employer is already consulting about redundancy. And they want to know, if I do get made redundant, I'm out of work, or also partners getting made redundant as well, will I be able to claim any benefits? So you might be aware that really the main out of work benefit at the minute is universal credit. And this is what we call a means tested benefit. So it's a benefit for people whose income is low and it's or sometimes nil. And the way it's worked out is the government has sort of set levels, depending on your household circumstances, about the amount that they think that you should be getting in each month. So, for example, a single person would have less than a couple, and a couple with children would have more than a couple without children, for example. So what they do is they work out what you should be getting into the household each month, and then they will see what you have coming in. So, for example, if your partner has got an income, they will take that away. If you're getting a pension and things like that, they'll take that away. And anything else, that if you're not quite reaching that minimum level of income, then they will sort of top you up with universal credit. There are also other out of work benefits that you can consider applying for as well. So I suppose, and these are known as contribution-based benefits. These are not based on your income. They are based on your national insurance record. So if you have been in work for a long time and have been therefore paying national insurance contributions, then you may well be entitled to contribution-based job seekers allowance, regardless of any other income that's coming into your household. If you are unwell and you can't work, then contribution-based employment and support allowance might be the benefit for you as well. I know people are quite sort of sometimes the benefit system, in particular universal credit, can feel quite daunting. We do see a lot in the news about the difficulties around universal credit, but I think it's really important to kind of take that first step and make those applications if you do need the money coming in. A really good benefits checker, and I've already mentioned it once today, is Turn to Us. So I've put the web address there, turntous.org.uk. You can go on there, you can put your details in, and it will tell you what benefits you might be entitled to. But also it can be a really good one to sort of plan for the future as well. So if you think, I am really worried I might get made redundant, go on to Turn to Us early and work out what income that you might be having coming in if you do get made redundant. And also then you can start to budget, and you can start to think about areas that you might need to cut down on, for example. So this is an interesting one that we've been hearing a bit, actually, is people who are able to start saving money. So there are people who are very lucky, who are still in work, and have found actually that their outgoings have gone down a bit, maybe because they're not going out to dinner so much and they're saving money on their commute, or they're not, buying lunch every day while they're at work. And so actually they've got a bit of extra money coming in and they want to know the best way to save. So again, it all starts with a budget sheet, and I will repeat this over and over again, that doing a budget sheet is really one of the most important things you can do, because that's going to show you, okay, what have you got left over at the end of the week or at the end of the month, and that's going to show you what you can save. Another really good tip is think about any big expenses that you have throughout the year. So I think a really common one is your MOT on your car, if you've got a car. Have a think about how much you've had to spend at your yearly MOT for the past couple of years, and try and have a think about what it might cost you this year again, so that then you can actually start saving that amount. You can put it in a completely separate savings account to any other savings that you've got, and you'll know that that's building up nicely, so that when your MOT comes around, you're not suddenly hit with a large bill that you can't pay. And a really important tip is to save your money on payday. It's really, really tempting to think to ourselves, oh, well, what I'll do is at the end of the month, I'm probably going to have a little bit of money left over, and however much that is, I'm going to put it into a savings account. But actually, all the research shows that if you save money on payday, you're much more likely to actually save it, because it's less easy to spend it. So I'd always say, set up, if you know what you can afford to save, set up a standing order so it's going straight into your savings account on payday. Remembering that your savings are there for a rainy day. So if it gets to the end of the month and actually you've had an expense that you weren't expecting, you can take a bit of money out of your savings, and you can spend that money as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Laura, so much for sharing with us your, the questions that you commonly get, but also your advice. It's been really lovely to hear from you, so thank you. So it's been really great to hear from both Jerry and Laura today, and both of them are going to hang around till the end of the webinar, where we will allow some time for question and answers. So if you do have a particular question for Jerry or Laura, then please hold on to it and get ready to type it towards the end of the webinar. So we'll come to that as soon as we can. So before we finish today, we wanted to kind of highlight some common obstacles that might stop you from acting on this fantastic expert advice. And the 3 obstacles that you might struggle with might be procrastination, lack of motivation, or anxiety and worry. So we wanted to give you some advice on overcoming those obstacles. So starting with procrastination, essentially, procrastination is when we put off something that we know we need to do, and often with financial things, we know we need to do it, we know we need to pay a bill or resolve it or budget, but we put it off till later. And most of us procrastinate to some extent. We've all said at some point, I'll do it later, or I must get round to doing that. But some people can habitually procrastinate to such an extent that things can build up and their lives can start to feel very stressful as a result. And procrastination often amounts to deliberately avoiding having to confront our fears and anxieties. And it can flourish in 2 conditions. The first condition is when the task is not urgent, so we do not have to do it right now. So this might be a bill or something that we know we have to pay in the future, but it's not something we have to pay off right now. And so that's where we may procrastinate or avoid because we feel like we've got plenty of time. Secondly, when there is something more pleasurable to do now, and as we've already highlighted, Jerry and Laura both mentioned how anxiety provoking or difficult and challenging it can be to resolve some of these financial concerns, whether it's applying to universal credit or talking about our finances. There will always be something more pleasurable to do, and so we will, if we allow ourselves, put that pleasure before that pain. And so it's important to be aware of that. So why do people procrastinate? Well, there's a number of reasons. It might be lacking a sense of mastery. So you may hold the attitude that successful people achieve their goals without any frustration or difficulty, but this is not the case. Successful people just have this assumption that when life gets tough and frustrating, it is a struggle to be mastered. So when they come up against obstacles, they just carry on because they know that's what to expect. It's just a normal part of life is to overcome those challenges. Another reason might be that you assume you have to be in the mood. So people often think, I don't feel like it, I'll wait until I'm in the mood. But the problem is that some of these tasks are so boring or too demanding that you will never feel like it. You'll never be in the mood. And so it's important to recognise that it's important to put action before our motivation. And once you get started and begin to feel a sense of accomplishment, it will spur you to do more. Another thing might be fear of failure. You may leave the task until the last minute. You may say to yourself, well, I didn't have time to do it properly. And by doing so, you give yourself an excuse and protect yourself from the reality that your best effort might not have been good enough. And this may be when you're applying for jobs. You may avoid applying for a job because of the fear of failing or not being successful. It may be fear of the worst case. So you might be terrified that you will find out that things are even worse than you thought. So, for example, the credit card debt is much bigger than you think. And so because of this, you avoid finding out and ignore it. And that way you don't find out if it's true and you can live in that blissful ignorance. But unfortunately, it doesn't go away. So ignoring it doesn't help. It just can make it worse often. Or it might be a sense of shame. So you may feel unable to talk about it because you feel ashamed or embarrassed that you have been struggling financially. And this may lead you to avoid making phone calls or resolving your financial situation for fear of other people finding out about it. So it's important to think about what your reasons might be if you are noticing that you're procrastinating, but then also consider how it helps you, because there must be a reason why you're procrastinating and some of the reasons we've just talked about. So try and consider how it helps you, but also how it hinders you. So how does it hold you back? And then if you do want to make changes and no longer procrastinate, what will be good about that? But what will be bad? Because you may lose something by not procrastinating, but you may gain something as well. So it's important to weigh up the costs and benefits and the pros and cons of being a procrastinator. And then you put that into action. So the problem might be that you feel embarrassed and ashamed that you have got into debt, and you don't want to talk about it because perhaps people may judge you. And so some self-talk, something you can tell yourself, I can choose someone I trust to talk to. They may be able to help and share some advice, or I can talk to an organisation like Money A&E or Mental Health and Money Advice who can support me to work through my money challenges. And then what's that action? Well, reach out, even though it feels uncomfortable. It is difficult, but it will be easier with someone you trust supporting you. So that's just an example of how you can put into action overcoming that obstacle of procrastination. The obstacle of motivation can be overcome in a similar way, in that we can weigh up the costs and benefits of making change. So you start by weighing up the benefits and costs of doing nothing. So if things stay the same, what do I gain? What are those benefits? And what are the costs? But if I do decide to make those changes, what will it cost me? What normally are those obstacles that stop me from making those changes? And what will I gain? What will I benefit from? And often people find that because they focus on the benefits of doing nothing and the cost of change, they don't do anything. Whereas if you weigh up all of it, including the cost of doing nothing and the benefits of change, you will find that actually that motivation to make changes is there. And I've created an example here to show you how it can work for you, to help you see that actually, whilst it's challenging and uncomfortable to make changes, it is worth it, and you will find real solutions. You may be eligible for some benefits, and your anxiety will reduce eventually if you put these this practical advice into practice. Finally, the last obstacle that you may have be struggling with is anxiety, and sometimes excessive worry can be unhelpful, as it can cause difficulty in concentrating or cause feelings of fatigue and demoralization. And financial worries are often really difficult to put out of our minds, and this can make acting on them more difficult. So if you feel like you could benefit from some worry management, then we recommend our Managing Anxiety webinar, which you can find on the Thrive London YouTube platform. There's a link here on this slide, as well as examples of other webinars for mental health and well-being that you can also access on the Thrive London platform. So if you do wish to get further support about worry and anxiety, or any of these other topics, you can find those there. So our take-home messages from today's webinar: firstly, identify your money goals, whether that's a physical purchase such as a house, car, or paying down debt. Secondly, to assess your income and expenses and increase or decrease where possible. If possible, review your finances little and often, 10 minutes a day, and giving you that small time to focus on it is a good way to manage your anxiety. Even though it might seem daunting, complete a budget sheet, and try not to let feelings of guilt and shame hold you back from seeking help with money problems. And finally, you can overcome obstacles of procrastination and low motivation by weighing up the costs and benefits of doing nothing versus doing something. So before we finish, we'd really like you to choose one of these ideas from today's webinar that you will action this week. So if you go into the Q&A, these options will be there for you, and just select A, B, C, D, E or F, depending on which of these you feel is most relevant to you, and whether it's identifying your money goals, assessing your income and expenses, reviewing your finances little and often, 10 minutes per day, completing a budget sheet, seeking help with your money problems, or weighing up the costs and benefits of doing nothing versus doing something. So if you do that now, that'd be really great. And if you feel like you need more support, further support, then here is some our IAP service link, and you can find this in the slide deck. If you need more urgent support for your mood, we've already talked about the Samaritans today, but you can also text SHOUT to 85258, and they will offer some support as well. We have here, which you'll find in your slide deck, which you can find on the Thrive London website, useful resources and links. So some of the resources we've already talked about in the webinar, and a lot of others here. So this resource slide is all about finances and support that you can get around finances as well. We do really value your feedback, so if you do have a bit of time now, please use this link, which we're going to copy and paste into the Q&A, for you to leave any feedback about how you found today's webinar. We'd really love to hear from you as well. That is all from us in terms of presenting, but we'd now like to leave the rest of the time now for some questions. So we would really love it if you do have any questions for Jerry or Laura or myself. We'll leave the rest of the time now open for those questions. So please type them in now if you get a moment. Okay, so we have our first question. With work and full-time childcare at home, I just can't find time to look at my finances properly. What can I do?
I can respond to that one, and
yeah.
I think what's really a good thing to do is to kind of look at the four-step process that we spoke about just now. I know that time may be a problem, but really, if you kind of look at that process and spend, you know, something like 15 minutes a day, that is something that generally will really help you to begin to start taking a bit of control over what's happening with that, and really start helping you to focus more easily on that subject area. Other things I would say is potentially picking up the phone and calling some of those agencies that we spoke to, you know, we spoke of with expert advisors who can also offer support and potentially provide you with specific resources that can help you as well. So that might take a little bit of the time out, but I do think spending that 10 or 15 minutes a day after you've received some of that advice to put into practice the tips and the advice they give you will be really helpful. And you know, some of those agencies were sort of Money A&E, were mental health and money advice, national deadline, step change. These are all agencies that can potentially offer you a little bit of support around that. And Martin Lewis, the money savings expert, has a website as well, especially where it's not specifically a debt issue, but you're thinking about things to do with your money. It's a massive encyclopedia of different resources and support that you can use to help you.
Thank you, Jerry. We have another question. My partner is currently receiving job seekers allowance as he is out of work. However, what is the difference between this and universal credit? Should he have applied for this instead?
I can also
Thank you, Jerry.
Well, sorry, I will leave some for you, Claude. So again, with this one, yeah, it's really important. I would say to again look at that that 4-step process, but it's important to talk to your partner and where possible, if you're both in agreement, look at dealing at your household finances together. So try and pull together your incomes and your expenses and see what you can do there.
She wondered whether, or he or she, actually, I don't know gender, what's the difference between job seekers allowance and universal credit?
Yeah, so yes, so what I was going to say, apart from sort of pulling your stuff together, it's really important to speak to some of those agencies that I mentioned just now. Money, mental health and money advice, Money A&E, national deadline, step change, also income max. They all will help you to navigate the benefit system. It's a very complex system. Job seekers allowance is an old, well, it's not an old, it's an old benefit that some people still do receive if they've been on it for a long time. So it's a benefit that you would receive if you are not working. There are 2 types. You can get what's called contribution based if you've just stopped working, or if you've been out of work for a long time, you'd probably be on something called income based job seekers allowance. And it's a benefit that you can receive if you're not working, and it helps you to meet your everyday expenses. It's not actually available now. If you haven't been claiming benefits and you go to the job centre to get a benefit because you're out of work and you need to get some income, you will get what's called universal credit. So universal credit is a new type of benefit which it's like an umbrella benefit and includes a number of different benefits as well. But you will receive universal credit now, and job seekers allowance is a benefit that you would have received if you have been receiving benefits and not been in work for a number of years.
Okay, thank you, Jerry.
Oh, just to add though, it might be that the partner is receiving contribution-based job seekers allowance. So there are a small number of people who are making new claims for benefits where they're getting a contribution-based benefit. So if the partner was was in work quite a long time, and particularly if you, as the other partner, if that makes sense, are working and therefore have got a reasonable income coming in, it might be that actually it's contribution based job seekers allowance which you can still get. So that might be why they're getting job seekers allowance.
Okay, thank you both, Jerry and Laura. That's helped make that a bit clearer. Thank you. Another question, just want to ask the best way to start dealing with credit card debt.
Yeah, so so I'll take that one, Jerry, if that's all right with you. So again, I will repeat myself. The first thing to do is to do a budget sheet of your income and expenditure. Work out what you've got coming in each month, what you need to spend each month on things like your rent or mortgage, your gas and electric, your food, hobbies, things like that. Don't include any of your credit card payments within that, and see what money you've got left over to pay your credit cards each month. Now, if that's more than the minimum payments, that's great. And what you want to do is you want to start paying off the credit cards with the highest interest rate first. So you will need to pay at least the minimum on all of your credit cards, but start paying off the ones that have got the highest interest rate. So say you've got £100 to spare each month, and you've got 2 credit cards, and both of the minimum payments are £25 each. So you know you've got to pay £50 on the minimums. You've still got extra £50 spare, then that can go on the credit card with the higher interest rate, if that makes sense. The problem that you might have is if you get to the end of that budget sheet and you find, oh, well, actually, I can't afford to pay even the minimum payments on my credit card. That's the time when it's really important to go and get some debt advice, speak to Money A&E, National Debt Line, Step Change, so that they can advise you on negotiating with your credit card companies, telling them that you're struggling to pay at the minute and asking them to accept lower than the minimum payments, and also ideally freeze interest and charges as well.
Thank you, Laura. That's really helpful. We probably have time for another question.
There was one question that I did see about someone mentioning that they wanted to support colleagues around debt, and I just wanted to say that you know, we at Money A&E do work with employers in terms of helping them to find ways of talking about and supporting staff with money issues at work. And there's sort of 3 things that we would suggest, and the first is obviously that 4-step process that I spoke about, which is something that people can do themselves, which is identify your goal, look at your income and find ways of increasing it, look at your expenses, find ways of reducing it, and what you have left over as disposable income, you would then put that towards your money goal. But we also offer workshops for staff which can help them to talk a bit more about money and get some steps and tools that they can use practically. And we also offer sort of workshops and sort of champions workshops for team leaders, supervisors and managers, which can really help them to support their teams by helping them talk a bit more about money and giving them actual resources and tools that they can use if any of their staff or peers or colleagues come to them with money issues and they want to know what they can do as well.
Lovely, thank you, Jerry. Go on, let's do one more. Okay. I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to have a look. So imminent redundancy, likely to be unemployed for a long time, but has savings due to bereavement. Wondering, how does this work?
So on the sort of benefits side, again, it's about the difference between contribution-based and income-based benefits. So contribution-based benefits are not affected by your savings, so you can have a large amount of savings and still claim contribution-based job seekers allowance, which I would advise that you do, but that is only for a limited period of time, so usually only for 6 months. And at the end of that time, you then wouldn't usually be eligible for income-based benefits like universal credit if you've got a large amount of savings. So what it will be about will be then sensibly via a budget sheet working out how you need to use your savings to kind of get you through that period until you're back in work, or until the point where your savings become low enough that you can claim income-based benefits.
Okay, thank you. Lovely. We'd love to spend more time answering some of your questions, but unfortunately we are out of time. Advise, if you do want advice on any of these questions that we've been unable to answer, please contact either Mental Health and Money Advice or Money A&E or any of the other organisations on our resources list who will be fantastic to give you support and advice to help you with your finances in this really difficult time. But we hope that you've gone away with some really useful strategies to get you started. But as we said, if you need more help, there is so much help available, so do not struggle alone. And please reach out that phone and give these fantastic organisations a call. And we hope you wish you all the best and take care. Goodbye.